one in the classroom, one outside, and then one in the gym but actually doing sports.
So this is a video of Denzel explaining how to open Lightroom and edit photos.
So you're gonna upload your pictures to Lightroom, and I'm basically gonna be doing the basics. I'm just gonna start off with the light over here.
Do you want to show them how to get them into this model? Because sometimes that's hard.
Do
you know what I mean?
So usually when you upload the photo, it
Go to the top left.
It goes into this setting.
Push the top left. Doesn't it go into here?
Yeah.
And then you have to make a
first
folder.
add photos, or do something like this. So for example, I would click a photo like this. Cool.
That's.
And then.
So that's a folder. Oh, I need that folder, please.
Yes.
I want to look through that one.
So then we'll go back to the yearbook example. So you have this. You're gonna open the top one right here. These are your settings. You're gonna open light, and then you have your exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. So for shadows, for me, I typically like to. Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry, it's highlights. For highlights, I typically like to bring it down, not too much. Then for something for our yearbooks, when you print yearbooks, the photos are going to be a lot darker than you think. So that's why if you look at our yearbooks sometimes we overexpose them in order for them to get actually like the color that you would see if it's originally like this. So if we put this in the yearbook and we print it, it's too dark. So I usually bring it up a little bit. So that way, yes,
so he means he's going to underexpose it.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Make it lighter than it maybe should be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then, whites and blacks, sometimes you really don't have to really focus on this. That's if you really want to go into detail with the picture. But if you do want to adjust your whites and blacks, you would either click, I think for computers it's Alt. So for mine it's Option. If I hold Option and move it around, it'll go dark and it'll tell you where the whites are, adjusting them. So if I bring them up, obviously it's too white. So I only want it to where it's only showing a little bit of those. You see those white dots around? Just a little bit of those, not too much. And if it shows like all of this, then you would have to bring it down.
It's blown out, yeah.
Yes. So I put it like right there. And then blacks, same thing. But this time you're seeing, instead of going over, you would have to go under to show more of their, obviously, the black colors around it. So the difference from that is if you see on Audrey's hair, if I turn off the blacks, you can see how much brighter it is. If I bring it down, show that, it shows more detail of the blacks. Okay? So, that's the basic point of light. You can do the point
Which is
curve.
right from the top of the toolbar. So when you open it, that's the very first thing you can click on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can do point curve. I don't do point curve, but the basics about point curve is you're just basically adjusting each point in between these. If you see something like this, where this is too, where the thing is too high, you would have to lower it, obviously.
So the idea with this curve line, if you really get good at it, is the S curve.
Yes.
And that whole section of Lightroom is what
So like
McKenna's sister is like really good at. Making the
some sort of
perfect S curve to create the perfect tonality on your photo.
Yeah.
Okay. That's advanced, and mess with it if you have to, but there's plenty you can get done without messing with the curves. Okay.
So the thing that's dumb about Argent is the lighting. The lighting is trash, and we all know that. So again, like I said, in our yearbooks, we do a bit of a cooler color than a more warm color like this. So what I usually do is I mess around here with our color, which is under the light, right here. Color.
Got it.
Okay. So you have your tint, your vibrance, your saturation, and your temperature. I usually mess with the temperature. So for example, this is a bit too warm, so I'm just gonna bring down the temperature. As you can see,
Cooler.
it's getting a lot cooler than what this was.
And some of the pictures you turned in, that's going to be your fix for gym pictures, because a lot of gym pictures are really orange.
Yeah. So, for example, something like this is the type of
Too
tone
cool.
we would want to see in our yearbooks. But if you're really detailed, this is a bit too purple.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
So I have my tint right here. You have the green and oh my gosh. You have the green and purples. I would bring down the purples, and yes, you can see a bit of the green, but it's a bit better.
Yeah.
So yes, there's still a green around here, around down here, over here.
I don't
There's
see
a
the
lot of
green. Green
right
doesn't
here.
bug me. It's fine.
But it's not too into detail. This is not the dominant.
I love it.
Okay? So that's how you change the inside of a gym picture.
Got it.
You mostly want to focus on the temperature.
and consistency in all of your photos.
Yes.
Using Lightroom, you can also edit one, and then you can batch the rest of them. So if you took pictures in a gym, you edit one, you copy those edits, and you would apply it to all of the pictures.
There's also presets that you can use.
Yeah.
I have some presets here, but I don't use them.
You can make your own presets,
Yes.
and it really doesn't take long, which is kind of cool. It's much easier than Photoshop to do that.
So this picture is the new one, and this is the old one. There's
Got
a
it.
huge difference between it already.
Yeah.
Okay, go to the next one. So if you look at my camera, I have a very inconsistent white balance. For example, my white balance would sometimes be too warm, or would sometimes be too cool or too purple. So that's on you to adjust your white balance. So, for example, like this is too warm. So what we're gonna have to do is first I mess with the lighting. I bring up the exposure just a little bit, but not too much to where it overexposes the whiteboard. So just something like that. Bring down the highlights. Because once you bring down the highlights, you can actually see more detail into the board. Adjust my whites if I want to. I don't want to adjust my whites too much. I don't mess with the whites as much as I do with the blacks. So yes, it does look a bit.
Yeah, because a lot of your whites you can mess with exposure just by popping up your exposure a little.
And my temperature, this is a bit too warm, so I would have to adjust this down here. Yes, it is getting cooler, and this is the type of tone we want. You can kind of see here, if you go to your point curve.
Well, whatever tone you want it to be consistent.
Yeah.
So if it's a cooler book, then you want the colors to be
You
cooler.
can see with your point curve which one is too much. So for example, right now mine is a bit too blue. If I adjust this, yeah, you'll see that the whole thing here is adjusting.
The whole curve line, yeah.
The whole curve line.
So you see it's really spiking at points,
Especially
and you can
this
adjust to that.
This is what helps a lot is your blue point curve. Yeah, it is a bit overexposed, but that's what we want to when you print something in your yearbook.
Because our yearbook printer tends to oversaturate our pictures. So it means they're a little bit darker and they're more color than you ever intended when we get our books.
Outdoor shots, that depends on your camera and how you take it. For example, this one I overexposed it a bit too much, so obviously I would bring the highlights down. You can also see that when you bring the highlights down, you have more detail in your background.
Well, just mess with the exposure itself. See if you can do anything with that first.
Bring down highlights, bang.
Move the exposure around a little bit.
Exposure. It wasn't too overexposed, but it still helped a little bit.
Yeah.
And contrast down a little bit.
And you killed all your highlights. Be careful with that. Whenever you go to extreme on those bars, you'll notice different things will pop up in the photo. Hair will get really strangely outlined. Some weird things happen when you go to extremes on those bars. It's interesting.
It's a little bit too blue.
Yeah.
But again,
But we get it. Okay, go do one of those ugly gym shots.
Okay. So, if you see here, this is the most disgusting picture I've ever taken in my life.
It's perfect because this is the perfect example of what Lightroom can do. Go.
It's too orange, the detail, context, and everything sucks, but that doesn't matter right now. We're just gonna look at how to edit this photo. So, I wouldn't bring down my highlights here as much as I would in outside pictures like these. So I would just either bring it up or bring it down just a little bit. But like Mrs. Hill said, if you overdo your highlights, it's gonna mess everything up.
Definitely pop your exposure up a little.
I'll bring up my exposure.
Yep.
That. I'm gonna bring down my blacks instead of my whites. If you bring down your blacks in gym shots, it's a bit bad, but it's like if you want to give more detail, for example, like
It feels too dark. Yeah.
yeah.
Come on, go get rid of that orange tone. It's grossing me out.
So
Looks like a pumpkin.
that's my temperature now.
Yes. And that makes all the difference. So here's another thing you can do, and you need to use it really sparingly. Can you go down to effects? And I want you to use this so sparingly. You barely touch it. So do you notice how his photo is a slightly out of focus? Slightly?
Yes.
How can we fix that? Which of those effects does that?
This one.
The clarity one.
Oh.
But I mean, clarity is super finicky. You can see how awful that looks? You can just, thank you, Denzel. You're giving me like a seizure. Like if you can just touch slightly, if you can just crisp it up slightly, don't ever do more than that clarity wise. People often say don't touch clarity, but you can. You just do it sparingly. And when it's just slightly out of focus and you can just touch it a little bit, clarity is your button. So much better, yes?
In a way, but like sometimes either it's oversaturated when you change the temperature. So
Well, and you mess with the photo until you think it looks good. And then the truth is, as soon as you get it on that page with those other pictures, you're like, oh shoot, they all need to be slightly bluer. And then you go and grab them all and drop them all in and fix it real quick. Because you want every photo on that page to look similar with lighting. Looks
I'm
great.
not a big fan of it, but
10 minutes and 30 seconds sounds great. There's Lightroom. Get her done.